Hey, how y'all doing? I'm back again. Well, this might be back for the first time in a long time. I got really sick. I caught some type of bacterial infection. It took me damn near the whole week to recover. I was actually off work for a couple days as well. It was just really bad. Really bad sore throat, really bad fever. I just couldn't make videos, even though I wanted to. Like the suckiest part was my throat, for the most part, didn't hurt. It didn't hurt that much or almost at all, but I could just barely talk. And because I couldn't talk, I couldn't make videos, or the types of videos that I normally want to make, which are profiles and fight videos. Because obviously, if I'm sick, I don't want to give whatever I have to anybody else. So just basically kind of like a little bit of a self quarantine there until I finally did get better. But digress into the profile. This is the second time I'm recording this because I did some more testing after the video and realized one card was infinitely better over another card, and I'll get into that when we get there. But I just kind of wanted to lay out the key pieces of this deck, what makes this deck starkly different than any other Zorga profile you're gonna see on YouTube. At least in the YouTube space. I know I'm probably not the only one that figured out this is the most powerful, in my opinion at least, the most powerful way to play this deck, with basically just focusing around these two cards, Miscreant Beating and Black Magic. The reason is Black Magic is your Pot of Greed, which you can almost get off for damn near free, and you could do it almost every turn, if not every turn, thanks to Alchemagic. And Miscreant Beating is your big fat beater that gets bigger every turn by it gets bigger by +5 or +10 every turn. Not counting in Persona Rides, not counting in Grief, Spare, and Rejection. That's really what makes this deck makes this version of this deck so strong, is the fact that you can reach numbers of 40, 50, I've reached 60 easily without triggers. And then the card in the middle, which is basically your key piece of this deck. If you don't see this, at least one copy in the early to mid game, you really are just playing regular Zorga and not like Turbo Bind Zone Zorga, because this is what pluses you board. This is what gets your orders into the bind zone, so you could basically get this for free, and this just becomes a very huge beater that your opponent has to, if they have removal, deal with it every turn, for the fact you could just keep recurring them. But yeah, let's just get into the profile and things will make more sense. First thing I want to get into is the order cards, because these, it's Zorga, it's an Alchemagic deck. Well, it's not entirely focused on Alchemagic, it's focused on filling up your bind zone so you can abuse Black Magic, which is your Pot of Greed, which is why you're running it at 3 copies. You want to activate this almost damn near every turn. You want to activate Grief, Spare, and Rejection every turn, so that's why I'm running these both at 3. This is like the deadliest combination you could do, especially if you Persona Road, because this plus Persona Ride is a plus 20k, and then you draw 2 cards. If you Persona Road, you're drawing 3 cards for the turn. But that's why you're maxing out on these two. These are just the orders you want to Alchemagic the most, and that's why you're not maxing out on them. You're only playing 3 copies because you don't want to see too many. Yeah, you really don't want to see too many. There's even times that even though they are at 3, that I do just see multiples that kind of become dead in hand. That's another thing, that the deck's problem is it draws a lot. You draw a lot of cards, you gain a lot of advantage, and you have massive columns on your board. You make really nice numbers. The deck's problem is, to play this way, the fact that you're running so many cards that don't have shield, it can kind of just be your undoing, more or less, because there's games that, you know, you're in the grind, you're missing 5k shield. If that order in your hand, or if that grade 3 in your hand had a 5k shield, that literally would have been the difference. But this is, like I said, this is Miscreant beating Black Magic version of the deck, so that's why we are playing an excess amount of cards without shield. Next, I'm playing 2 Supernatural Condensation or Constriction or whatever. I'm playing 2 of this one over Regurgitation, is because Regurgitation costs a counterblast, and because of the way I'm playing the deck, you don't have just playing with this card like all day every day. You don't have the space to play all the cards that give you you don't have the space for Hendrinas. You barely have the space for what's his head? Rogue Headhunter, which makes your counterblast costs -1 when you Alchemagic, which is really good for this deck because this deck is super counterblast heavy. This is a counterblast 4 by itself. That's why you always want to Alchemagic with it, because it reduces cost per every card in your bind zone. This is a counterblast. This is a soul blast. It's super soul blast heavy too. Like, there's a lot of times that you're not even going to use this in the early game. It's more of like a mid to late game card that you are going to, you know, you're using this more mid to late game where you do have because all your soul is going to Coffin Shooter. All your soul is going, literally all your soul is going to Coffin Shooter and Rancor Chain. So most of the time you're only able to expend 1 soul a turn, if that. But you're playing this at 2 copies because of Coffin Shooter. Putting orders into the bind zone, you don't have a way of recurring them, or at least in my version of the deck, you don't have a way of recurring cards in your bind zone. I tried it. It kind of felt like I was going backwards. Like, it gave me extra follow-up, but it was going backwards in terms of my strategy. So that's why we're playing 2 of this. I'm so fucking stupid. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't even explain why I'm playing this over Regurgitation. The only reason I'm playing this over Regurgitation is I get to choose whatever grade. It's not based off of what I retire. Because, you know, you obviously want to call out this guy, Miscreant Beatings, because it's your main beater of the deck. You want to call those out. Or you want to at least call that out with your Vanguard's ability, and then call another a grade 2 unit or a grade 1 unit and give it extra power with this. Versus Regurgitation, it does call out too, but it's based off what you retire. And most of the time, you or your opponent are going to have grade 2 or less rears. You're not going to have what's it called? You're not going to have grade 3s, which is like, don't like. And the fact that, again, it's a counterblast, and it's a counterblast, it's a soul blast, and this deck is just very counterblast heavy until you get to like late game where everything is almost free. And then for our final order, we're running 10 orders, is Tearful Malice. Now, why am I playing Tearful Malice? The card that everyone calls trash, the card that no one plays, not even set 1 Zorga played it. Like, what, set 1 Zorga played like maybe 1 copy if you wanted to be cheeky. This is super good in this version of the deck because, you know, you're going balls to the wall with your counterblast. You're going balls to the wall with your soul blast. Like, you're using 1 to 2 counterblast every turn. You're using up all your soul every turn. Whether you got 1 or 2 soul, you're using all of it, or almost dang near all of it. And this helps in those 2 respects, where it gives you a counter charge and it gives you a soul charge by putting this order card into soul. And you do have ways of soul blasting the order out, so that's really not too much of an issue with Coffin Shooter. With Coffin Shooter is your main way of getting it out, but like, he's so easily recurrable, you almost always have access to Coffin Shooter, so it's not really that big of a deal. But another reason that you are running Tearful Malice is there's 3 reasons. You need the counterblast, and you need the counterblast, and you need the soul. And the 3rd reason is there's a lot of times with your Coffin Shooter, with your other grade 2s, your board is kind of clogged up with units that can't boost, and you already have attackers. So this is just a good way of, you got your Coffin Shooters to do what you wanted to do. You can just clean house. Clean up your board, more or less. And you're running these at the reason that you are running these at 2 is because these are the order cards that you are going to be putting into your bind zone with Coffin Shooter. The reason you're running them at 2 is because you want to have access to them. Because as long as you have the 1, if you use it from hand, you get to essentially use it twice. Or, you know, you get Alchemagic and then you got at least 1 use out of it. So that's why we are running the order cards the way we're doing it. Do I want to just lay them on top? Nah, I'm not going to lay them on top. And then rest of the deck. Where is it? Where is it? Okay. Going on to the rest of the deck. Wow, 10 minutes already. You are maxing out on Persona Rides. Now I have heard of that that one of the players at my locals, he just took out the Persona Rides just for more space, and it's honestly understandable. The deck, it's just so hard because you don't have a lot of space to play all these amazing cards that let you do things for free. These amazing cards, these amazing orders. Like, how many different orders am I playing? I'm only playing 4 different orders. But and there's just so many like good amazing orders, but in this version of the deck, like Nectar just doesn't do anything. Regurgitation becomes so fringed. Like the retire is nice. Like that's the only thing this deck is basically missing is like, oh damn, I wish I had some form of retire or some form of spot removal. Regurgitation is nice, but could be like very situational, whereas condensation or condension, I could really just use that whenever I want at my leisure, as long as I do have the soul. But we're maxing out on the Persona Rides because obviously one of your strongest plays in this deck is Persona Ride, Grief, Despair, and Rejection. Just that plus 20 to the front row is very strong, and it just makes your columns 38s, 43s, 50s, 53s. And yeah, that's why I'm maxing out on it. And it's another basically, you know, more draw power in the deck. Then 2 Miscreant Beatings. Only 2. I wouldn't play more than 2. I haven't felt the need, because usually I play off 1 and then just make a grade 1 and 2 column and beef it up to whereas it's at comparable power to this. Or, you know, you actually do have the 2 and you don't need more because, again, you can keep recurring them from the drop zone. So that's why I'm only playing 2. There are times where I do have both in the drop zone and I can't get both of them. I don't have condensation or I don't have the soul for condensation. So, you know what I have to do? What I said was you'd make a grade 1-2 column and then you place this in the other line. But besides that, I really wouldn't play anymore. You're running so many cards that don't have shields. You're running 10 orders. You're running 5 extra grade 3s. That's 15 cards in your deck that don't have shield. You really don't need any more. But and then we are maxing out on 4 copies of Coffin Shooter. Honestly, this card deserved the freaking foil. It deserved the foil. It's a common card too, which is crazy because it's a common card that no one really looked at. Like I know I heard of topping a Stoichealist that was playing this, and it was actually like really not Stoichealist, a Magnolialist that was playing this. And it was actually really good for that version of the deck. But that was during set 2. But now that set 3's out, ZORGA looking at this like, damn, it's kind of nice. You kind of nice with Black Magic. You kind of nice with Miscreant Beating. Like, damn, I'm going to have to play you at 4. That's the only way. Like, honestly, you really do need to see this in the early game. At least 1 copy. Like, if you see multiple copies, you don't always have the ability to use all the multiple copies because, again, you're using all your soul every turn. Every turn you gain a soul, you're using that soul. But it's just a very important piece of the deck that you do have to max out at 4, or at least in my opinion. And then another important card of the deck, very important I'd say, that I have seen lists run Shadow Cloak at 3. it needs to be at 4, especially because there are times where you don't have an order in your drop, or you have an order in your drop, but you want to use it for Alchemagic, you don't want to use it for Coffin Shooter, but you really do need to activate Coffin Shooter. Shadow Cloak just activates them for free. It dumps your extra condensation, it dumps your extra Tearful Malice. Or, like I said, if you did bind with Coffin Shooter and you don't have for Alchemagic, you know, it's just an extender that lets you play the game. An extender slash playmaker that lets you play the game. And its second ability, it doesn't come up all the time because, like I said, the way you're using your soul so aggressively, you can't activate all your abilities because you can't activate all your soul-based abilities in one turn because you don't have the resources. Like, that's why if I had Hendrinas, if I had the space for Hendrinas, like I might there's feasible that you cut one of this, cut a grade 1 and then play 2 question mark, but this is what I'm just gonna stick with this for now, just because of consistency's sake, instead of just trying to tech it out even more. When you already know it works, stick with what you know that works. Its second ability, like I said, it doesn't come up all the time, but it is helpful in the occasions of getting that extra 5k shield that I talked about, of getting that extra, you know, back to hand. You could rebounce your grade 1, you could get a PG. I actually recently, in a test game, I blocked with an overtrigger, and then I used Zorga's ability to call that overtrigger Alchemagic, and bounce the overtrigger back to my hand, and then used it again for next turn to make sure I survived. So, really important piece of the deck. I wouldn't run any less than 4, at least in my opinion. Then I'm playing 3 Rogue Headhunters. This is like basically your flex spot of the deck, and I was playing Carrying Proceedings, because, like I said, if your cards go into your bind zone, you have no way of getting it out. So with Carrying Proceeding and Shadow Cloak, it let me at least get an order back so I could play an order for turn to get the ball rolling if I didn't have Alchemagic. But it was just too counterblast heavy. Too many times where I saw the card and I really couldn't use it. Like, even though, you know, it is just, you know, it's supposed to be quote-unquote an extender piece, or not an extender slash playmaker if you don't have any other plays. But this is just way more valuable. This just turns, like, this is what helps turn you on early game, or, you know, at least, because you're only gonna have maximum 2. If you're really sultry, you're gonna have 3 in your bind. Yeah, the most you could have is 3 in your bind because you're 2 soul without adding any more soul. The most you could have is 3 in your bind, and then when you Alchemagic, oh, then it's free. But you know, that's a very not gonna happen. Most of the time, you're gonna have 2 or 1 in your bind zone the first time, and like I said, you want to be using this effect every turn. It's a draw 2. You want to use this every turn. You want to call this guy out every turn. Like, it's literally a draw 2. You want to Alchemagic that every turn. You want to play that order every turn. That order is your baby. Like, there's times that you know, obviously this is the best combo of the deck, Grief Spirit Rejection and Black Magic, but there's just so many times where you need the draw. Zorga needs the draw. Like, you know, you call cards from you can call max up to 2 cards from your drop zone every turn, and that's nice, but you just need the extra draw, that extra advantage, which puts you over the top of, you make big scary columns, and you have a large hand. But that's why I'm playing it at 3. 13k booster is very nice, of making that 1 and 2 column, of putting it behind the Vanguard, making the Vanguard more threatening than it usually would be. But most of the time I don't have a Vanguard booster because of this the standard combo of the deck. Your Vanguard's always going to be swinging for 33 or 23 at least, without Persona Ride. So most of the time my Vanguard doesn't have a booster, but you know, you can put it behind the Vanguard. It has happened. And then 4 PGs, really nothing to explain here. this kind of clogs too. That's the thing, like, it kind of clogs, or like at least against multi-attack decks, and multi-attack decks are what basically are what the meta game is right now. Really strong multi-attack decks, but you really do need to play it at 4. Decks are too strong, man. If you're able to PG at all, you need to see it. And going on to the triggers, this part, draws, I would not recommend draws. You get very close to decking out in this deck because you're drawing 2 cards every turn. You're drawing 2 to 3 cards every turn. 2 to 3 cards, 4 cards if you Persona Road and used Tearful Malice and used Black Magic. So you don't need draws in this deck. You don't need draws in this deck. 4 heal, 8 crit. This crit right here, I understand that it is, these crits are going up in price and are a little bit harder to find if you aren't, going to locals and just getting packs and pulling the crits you need. Like, I pulled a bunch of crits that I don't need. Like, I say that and I have every deck, but I pulled a bunch of crits that I already don't need. And it's just not necessary. It really isn't. I'm sure there's some fringe scenario where you need the soul and you call it, and the 2K matters, but it's really not necessary in this deck. If you don't have it, normal crits will suffice. I'm saying this in all my deck profiles now, that if you don't have it, it's okay. Normal crits will suffice. It's just one of those cards where it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And then 3 of the 20k shield fronts, and then 1 stoic over trigger. The only thing that you could really switch, or at least in my opinion, the only thing that I would really change from this trigger lineup is maybe cut a crit and put an extra 20k front, just because you just have a lot of cards in your deck without shield. Like, you could filter them out your deck very easily, like, don't get me wrong, but you're still running a lot of cards in your deck without shield. And that is the profile. There's really nothing much else to say. Your worst matchup, your worst enemy is yourself. Like I said, with your shield, that's really the only thing that is of super concern in this deck, is guarding capability, because you're running so many cards without shield. You are your own worst enemy in that regard. Bricking, you can brick again because of all the cards you're running without shield. You can brick because of that, quote unquote, outside of just shield value, just not having enough cards to play or to make nice columns with. But besides that, I'm pretty sure this deck can bob and weave with any other deck in the format, like uncontested. It could bob and weave every other, not uncontested, like we're like, it's gonna mollywop every deck in the format, but this version of the deck is, at least in my opinion, tier 2 playable. Tier 2 playable, very, very close to tier 1, or at least in my opinion, very close to tier 1, just because of the, it has the same draw power as Gravidia, except Gravidia is a control deck, where this deck is just literally a plus and beatdown deck. But that's going to be it for the profile, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Tell me down below what deck you want to see me build next, what deck you are, what take of a deck you want me to do. I'm really trying to get match videos. It's hard. The last time I went to locals, it was surprising, actually. We had so many players, and it really is a small locals. We had more players than usual. I wasn't really able to whip out my camera. There really wasn't space to whip out my camera, so I just decided not to. But there will be match videos in the future, also with commentary. We finally got the laptop. Possibly also remote duels or remote fights. But yeah, later, guys.